Good evening, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you to ITP Guide 7.0. I'm Jitni and I'll be your host for today. And it's truly an honor to welcome you all on behalf of MS Club of SLIIT. So, ITP Guide is a special event organized by MS Club of SLIIT aimed at spreading awareness among students about the information technology project. We've been hosting this event since 2019, specifically targeting second year, second semester students who are currently immersed in the Information Technology Project module. So, by joining us today, you have taken a significant step towards success as this event is designed to enhance your knowledge and help you to excel in your upcoming project. We genuinely appreciate your presence here. And before we dive into session, I have a small reminder for all of you. So if you have any questions or doubts throughout the session, please don't hesitate to share them in the chat. We'll be more than happy to address them and provide you with valuable insights. So, all right then. Without further delay, let's get into our session. So the first session of today is going to be Introduction to ITP, which will be conducted by Sayuru Bopitiya, who is a third year software engineering undergraduate at SLIIT. So he will be guiding us through the sessions. So over to you, Sayuru.
Hello. If you can hear me and see us.
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Right. Okay. So a very good evening, everyone. I'm Nisal Gunawardhana, and I will be conducting the session on introduction to ITP. So in this session, I will be taking you through what ITP is, if you're not already familiar with it, and what you need to get a good grade at ITP, and why ITP is important for your career. So let's first start with what is ITP. Now, ITP is just a random module with 4 credits, but involving 8 members, and it also involves an industrial level project. So aside from having some sort of weight to it with it having 4 credits, the most important thing in ITP are the next 2. Managing a team with 8 members is the first time that you get to experience this. Early on, you may have worked with teams with 4 members, but this time it's double, right? So you need to know how to work with 8 members. So I'll be taking you through that as well. And you get the experience of working at an industrial level project, which is also could be your first experience on an industrial level project. So I'll be taking you through all this. So first, let's take a moment to think about what the importance of ITP is and why do you need it for your career. So when you think of ITP, the one thing that I mentioned before as well, you get the chance to manage a team, get the chance to work in a team of 8 members. So it's a bit difficult than you think. And when you work in a team, you get certain issues, right? Because you are not just one person, you need to think of certain aspects. And also the importance of ITP on your career. This will help you once you go into the industry, you start working in a tech company, you start working in a development team, you get to learn people skills through ITP and that you can apply when you start working for an internship or permanent position in a company. So once you start working with a company, you can use the skills that you have learned when you work in ITP in your project group and apply it in the industry. So this will be sort of the foundational stepping stone that you have towards bridging the gap between the university and the industry. So think of this as a learning experience because this is very important and get the maximum out of this ITP module. Okay. Right, jump a little bit ahead. Right. So I know most of you might have already selected your topic. And but even though I'll just take you through this and maybe mainly focus on the project scope a little bit. So when you think of the project topic selection, it should be very unique, right? It can't be something very common like hotel management system, payroll management, ticket reservation, something like that. Should be something very unique because the lecturers have already seen these common things so many times and they're mostly fed up with it, right? So you need to impress the lecturers. You need to come up with something very unique. Unique in the sense not very complex, right? A unique idea doesn't always have to be a complex idea. Although it should always be a simple idea. It should be something in the middle. So think of something like that. To come up with something like that, I would encourage you to have discussions with your team, along with the team members, brainstorm a little bit. That will help you a lot. And when you're coming up with a project idea, there are two approaches. One is the real world problem approach and the client based project. The real world problem is that you find a solution to a problem that exists in the real world and you do the design for it, you do the implementation for it. And when you think of a client based project approach, you get to work with the client. You start to identify their requirements and then you start building solutions for it. So I would recommend you go forward with the client-based approach because you get the chance to work in a real-world problem in hackathons and all that. But very rarely you get the chance to work with the client-based project. So uh, I would recommend you to go with that. And when you start selecting on the scope of the project, there are certain aspects that you need to consider. One is the time management, because this is not the only commitment you have. You have some other modules as well. So think of that as well. When you're coming up with a scope, don't include a lot of features, right? Because that will take a long time to develop and you won't even be able to complete it. So think of that. Think of the time aspect as well. And also the skill management. So here when we think of skill, what I mean is, so you have 8 members in your team. Not all 8 members have the same skill level in your team, right? So some members might be really good at design, UI design and UX, some and a little low technical skills in development. There might be some, the others. So good in development, but not that much up to standard in UI UX. And that's entirely fine. You don't have to be, you can't always be all rounder. If it's possible, you can. But when you start thinking of skill management, um, you need to start focusing on aspects such as don't make your project too complex. Don't include all this AI and machine learning and stuff that you don't think you can implement. Think of stuff that you can do, right? And always think of the members' ability to do the implementation and assign the work so that they can do it. So think of the skill management aspect as well. And yes, as I said, have discussions with your team. That's very important. Have proper communication, and that will inevitably help you to have each and every member to have a clear understanding of the project. And this, I think you already know. The project should have 8 business functions. So that in technical aspects, that means you need to have 8 CRUDs, right? Create, read, update, and delete. And in addition to that, you need to have report generation per team member and a search filter feature. So these are the mandatory requirements sort of thing. In addition to that, if you have time, you can start implementing new features. Right? So yeah, I think you already know that. And the next part is very critical, integration of the project. So the question. No, right. Okay. So yeah, uh, so yeah, the integration of the project is very important. because you can do all the work single as individuals, but it's very difficult to combine them all together. You get marks for project integration. So I'll come back to that later. And that's very important. And documentation as well. We have separate session for it coming up soon. So yeah, these are the stuff that you need to sort of keep in mind when deciding on the scope and selection of the topic. Yeah. Hearing some noise. Someone mute themselves. Hello. Okay. No. Right. Okay. So yes, as I mentioned, there are two approaches. One is the client-based approach and the real world project approach. What I would recommend is the client-based project approach, and so that you get the chance to work with a client. So when you're working, when you start running a client-based project, there are certain steps that you need to sort of follow. First thing is that you need to find client. So that can be through a personal contact, or maybe you go to their website, gather their contact information, and find a client. And when you're finding a client, sometimes they will ask you to sign some documents such as an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. The reason for an NDA, it means that you don't expose their company's sort of information to other third parties, which is completely reasonable, um, because that's personal company information. So before you sign some sort of agreement, I would suggest you to have a word with your supervisor first, and then go ahead with it, because that's totally fine. Um, the next step will be the initiation of the project. So when we say the initiation, that means you need to gather information. That's by interviews, having surveys, and getting the feedback of the employees working there. So basically what you need to do is, if there is an existing system in the company, find out the problems in the existing system, and then come up with the solutions for it, right? So that's the reason why you need to gather information. There might be some instances where there is no system at all, where they're doing all the work manual. So in those cases, you need to gather information from the employees who are working there, see how you can improve their efficiency. And second is to set the client expectations. When we mean setting client expectations, I'm sorry, I'm getting a noise. Can someone please mute this up? Give me a second. Right. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So when I say setting the client expectations, what I mean is when you first find these problems, and you need to communicate the solutions to the client. And by that way, you can actually set, the client can have some expectations about what sort of project that you will be implementing for them. And the third is defining the deliverables. This also ties in what I mentioned before. So you need to specifically state what are the things that the client will get from you after your project is implemented. It can be 8 business functions. That means 8 CRUD actions. You can implement a report generation, all those things, you can list them down and you can give it to the client. So the next step is basically the planning. You take the deliverables, the job that is needed to be done, and you break it down into tasks for the team to develop. And you need to assign the work to them. And when you're assigning work, make sure the team member knows, has all the skills for it. Uh, right. Sorry about that, guys. We are getting some noise. Not really sure from where. Anyway, okay. I'll continue. Okay. So the third step is basically the planning stage, and yeah, you need to break down the tasks to the team and assign the work and establish the deadlines. Here, I have mentioned the word realistic. The reason for that is because you can't assign a work today and expect your team member to complete it tomorrow because they have other commitments as well. So you need to be very understandable of your team when you're establishing deadlines. And you should establish deadlines. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should have deadlines, but keep in mind the other aspects as well, which is the skill and time, everything. Give some time for him to work on. And yeah, execution means the development and the design and all that, which is basically the continuation of the project. And five is the closure, where you complete the project and you hand it over to the client for feedback. So I would strongly suggest going with the client-based approach because you get to learn a lot of stuff, not just the technical aspect, but the documentation, handling a client, handling the team, the requirements and all that, you get to learn a lot. So I would suggest you go with that. Yeah, let's go forward. SDLC model. I think you have already come across this in your previous semesters. When we're thinking of the ITP, we usually say go follow the SDLC because it ties in with what everything I said before. First, you need to have proper planning. Plan a lot. If you have the planning done, that's the foundation. If you plan it properly, the development, the implementation, the testing, integration, everything is going to be very easy for you. So plan properly, then do the analysis properly, gather the requirements and everything, and come up with a solution. Do the analysis, do the design stage of it, the architecture well. And then third is the design. When we think of design, the UI and the UI X aspects come into play. Don't make your designs too complex with lots of colors and buttons and all that. Just keep it simple because you do your implementation based off your design. So keep your design simple. And implementation, obviously, it's the development phase. And testing and integration, you do maybe unit tests, API testing, integration testing, and doing the integration where you combine all the individuals work into one, and then maintenance of the application, which won't come across a lot, but it's good to keep that in mind. So we would suggest you follow this SDLC model. And yeah, when we said planning, tool that will help a lot is Agile. And yeah, Agile is basically the way. And I think you have learned this in software process modeling. So we have the 4 principles. I'm not going to go over that again, but you can take a look of the agile principles. And I'll tell you why you need to implement agile in your ITP group. So if you properly implement agile, you will be able to improve your quality of work. You will be able to do development in a very quality way, the documentation, all of that. You'll be able to improve the quality and the speed of work that you do and the flexibility you have with your team, that will improve as well. And the complete visibility of the project, that means that if a supervisor wants to check your progress of the project, you can just quickly show your maybe Kanban board and say, okay, this is our progress. We have completed this much of tasks and this much is remaining. At any specific duration, at any Viva, this, if you have implemented Agile properly, it will help you a lot because you can show that at any time. And cost control here, it's in terms of time because it's not a lot of cost involved, money involved. As undergraduates, time is money, and you need to think in terms of time. So think of those aspects as well. And so for implementing Agile, you can have these project management tools which are free. So you have ClickUp, Jira, Trello, and Asana, and these are all free. And you can collaborate with your teams and go forward with it. And there is something called Kanban boards where you can have 3 columns basically, where it's sort of to do and to do open on you, and then you have in progress or completed and finished. Basically, the stuff, the tasks that are needed to be done, you have it in the to do column, and that is in progress. You move if you want the task to, if you start the task, you can move it into in progress. And if you have completed it, you can move it into completion after the review processes and everything is done. You can have an additional 4th column in between the in progress and completed called under review. If that, but that's mostly into like development sort of projects. But yeah, you can take a look at those stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things to learn about running an agile project. So um, yeah, I told you the benefits of agile. Now let me tell you how to run an agile project. The first step is already done. So you have already assembled the team and you have the team leader as well. And the second thing is, I think also you guys have an idea on what the requirements are and everything. And the third thing, which I think is the most important, creating the sprint. So a sprint is basically the iterative thing that keeps on repeating throughout the project. And when we think of a sprint, there is something called the sprint duration or the length of the sprint. The length of the sprint should be ideally between 1.5 to 2 weeks. What I personally recommend is go with 2 weeks. Shouldn't be more than that. It shouldn't be less than that. So, because the entire ITP semester sort of runs for like 4 months, right? If you have the length of the sprint for 4 weeks, that means 1 month. And so you basically have only 4 sprints, right? So that's not recommended. So what I say is go with 2 weeks. Don't have less than that cursor because you have other modules, you have mid-text exams and everything. So go with 2 weeks, and then these are the sort of elements that you have in an agile project. So we have sprint planning, where you take items from the backlog, the stuff that is the tasks that you need to do, and you take them into the sprint. Only the tasks that you can complete within that sprint. Don't take everything into the sprint because you need to do it and you won't be able to do it within the end of the sprint. So what do? You take the stuff that is remaining and you take it to the next sprint. And if it's not completed by that sprint, you take it to the next. Ultimately, what will happen? Those items will never be completed, and most likely you will not be starting implementing that. So my recommendation to you is only take the ones that you can complete into the sprint and start executing the sprint, do the development and go ahead. And sprint execution is development, and sprint review is basically what happens at the end of the sprint, where all the team members have a meeting and you sort of share what you have completed within the sprint. Okay, so I did the backend, I did a part of the UI, I did a part of the documentation for it. So you sort of share what you have done within those 2 weeks. That is a good practice because you all the team members get an update on where the project stands right now. So that's completely optional. I mean, you can, it's better if you can do it. And yeah, and the last item also, it's optional. It's a sprint retrospective, which happens after the sprint review, also at the end of the sprint, where you take a look back at the sprint on things what went wrong, what went correctly, and areas that you could improve within the sprint. So those are really optional things. I mean, you can take a look at this later as well. I just gave a quick run through on sprint and agile and everything. The reason I mentioned this is because this is the way projects are run in a tech company, and easily you can implement that within your ITP group. And if you do it, it will be very easy to go to that transition if you're doing an internship or whatever. So my suggestion is start doing this because it will help you in the future. And basically, it's a learning experience. So take the most out of it. Yeah. So before I wind up, these are some tips for all of you. Things that I mean, I also did ITP in my second year. Things that we did correctly, things that we learned the hard way. So all of this I came to a list. The list is pretty long, but I'll quickly run through it. Um, so you should have proper planning. I stress on this a lot. Proper planning because we had some situations where we couldn't, couldn't plan properly. So we ended up hurting later. So you need to plan properly. Think of aspects such as time, the members' skills, and the scope of the project. Don't make the scope very large. Don't make it too complex. Don't add features here and there, here and there. Don't do that. Keep it to a medium level. Keep it nice and simple, and that will help you for the implementation as well. And divide the documentation work. Now I've seen this a lot. Saw this during when we were doing the ITP as well. Member teams got in members just for the documentation work. So that person only does the documentation. There is one to do the UI. There's one to do the design, the development, and one for the testing like that. Don't do that because this is a learning experience. Everyone should contribute to each and every element of the project or the application. So divide the documentation work, right? And divide the development work, divide the UI design, everything. Everyone should contribute to each and everything because at the end of the day, yes, it's a good grade, right? You're getting a grade, but it's a learning experience. You get to learn something from IT, and that's the most important thing. And think of that as well. And when we think of designs, I think this will be covered later. Come up with minimalistic designs. Don't use a lot of colors, right? And the design should be consistent throughout the application. So 7 members may use white as their background and 1 member uses blue as their background. The application isn't consistent. So brainstorm and design common templates. That's the next point. If you come up with common templates in Figma, that's something that we were able to do. That made our work much easier. Our documentation stuff we could complete very quickly because we came up with common templates, and members could take duplicates of that and start completing. Come up with simplistic ones. Don't overuse the elements. Come up with simplistic ones. Think of the user experience as well. So yeah, this will be discussed much later. I just want to focus it here as well. And this is the most important thing. Use version controlling from the very beginning. Um, so you get points for integration, you get marks for integration. And the thing is, you can all do the development individual. And if you aren't able to combine it into one integrated application, none of you will get marks. Okay, so this is very important. When you start a project, initialize a repository, check out the branches, divide the branches, have a separate development branch aside from the master branch, merge it to that, keep it updated all the time, right? Because if you start integrating it at the very end, you will definitely get conflicts. So avoid that. Please use version controlling from the very beginning. And I just want to stress that because it's very important. And explore new libraries and frameworks. Most of members teams use Stack, but there is no limitation, right? It can be Next, you can use Next, you can use Angular, you can use Java, Spring Boot, anything, right? Anything that your whole team is comfortable with, whole team is skilled in, go ahead with it, totally fine. And explore new libraries, UI libraries, such as we have this MUI library, which has this built-in search, not search, filter, sort and filter function within the MUI table, so you don't have to implement it again. So, uh, take this ITP opportunity as a place where you can explore these things and start including them into your project or application. And have proper communication with your members, be understanding, always help each other, follow the agile way, yes, and use automations wherever possible. So and the reason I mentioned this will save you lot of time. There's something called GitHub Actions. If you're not familiar with it, go check it out. GitHub Actions will help you for code review processes before you merge a huge commit into your dev branch. So learn those stuff. Take a look at those stuff if you are not familiar with it already. And quality over quantity. This I mentioned because this is on the aspect of features. Don't overload the application with a lot of features, right? You can have started or implementing 20 features, but if only 10 features work properly, that I mean, there's no point, right? So the 10 features that you do develop it properly so that it functions 100% of the time. At any time you work, the chart works and the report generation works, search and filter, everything works. So always focus on quality over quantity, because at the end of the day, it's about the usability of the application, which is the next point. At the end of the day, you're building an application that a user can use, the client can use, right? That's why I said teamwork is very important. If 7 members did their job well, you will have 7 business functions with report generation, search. But if one member didn't, that means that business function is lost. At the end of the day, usability of the application goes down. So don't make that happen. Always the main priority should be on the usability of an application. That's the main thing in software development. So think of that. And last one, I think I should mention. I mean, I know you guys will use ChatGPT and the other generative AI tools, but use it responsibly. I'm not saying you can't use it. You will use it. I know that. So use it responsibly. At the end of the day, it's a learning experience for all of us, and don't be totally dependent on it. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And yes, thank you very much. Sorry, it took a little bit more time. Before I go, I want to mention there are some other sessions that we have recorded previously in ITP Guide 6.2 last year, where we have focused on topics such as DevOps and hosting, some cloud computing and version controlling, GitHub Actions and those things. So it's available on our MS Club of SLIIT YouTube channel. I think we can drop the channel link here. So yes, that's it from my end. I thank you for listening and wish you all the very best and ITP. Good luck.